记者朋友，大家下午。
Good afternoon. Welcome to today's press briefing. The floor is open to questions.
谢发言人，总台央视记者。我们注意到，中国驻苏丹使馆发布了关于。
We have noted that the Chinese embassy in Sudan has issued a notice about the statistics of Chinese citizens in Sudan to leave the country. There are also reports saying that the military Department of Sudan has started to evacuate citizens of certain countries. Can the Foreign Ministry confirm that? Has China started to evacuate its nationals from Sudan? Since the sudden change happened in Sudan, the CPC Central Committee has been very concerned about the security and safety of Chinese citizens in Sudan. The Foreign Ministry has activated the emergency mechanism of consular protection and worked closely with the relevant departments, local governments, and the embassies and consulates of Sudan and its neighboring countries to fully protect the safety of our compatriots and drafted evacuation relocation plans. So far, the ministry has sent a task force to Sudan, and the first group of personnel has been safely evacuated to a neighbor of Sudan. The Foreign Ministry and the embassy once again remind the Chinese citizens of closely following the alerts, report their information, and stay in contact. Next one, please.
发言人好，塔斯社记者提问。上周五，
TASS News Agency, last Friday, Chinese ambassador to France, Lunar, in an interview with French media, talked about Crimea. He said that it depends on how the issue is viewed. Crimea originally belonged to the Soviet Union, and then Soviet Union leader gifted it to Ukraine. What's your comment on this?
问题上的立场没有变化。
China's position on relevant issue remains unchanged. As to the issue of sovereignty, China's position is consistent and clear. China respects all countries' sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, and upholds the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. After the Soviet Union dissolved, China was one of the first countries that established diplomatic ties with the countries concerned. Since the establishment of diplomatic ties with these countries, China has followed the principles of mutual respect and equality in developing friendly and cooperative bilateral relations with them. China respects the status of the former Soviet republics as sovereign countries after the Soviet Union's dissolution. As to the Ukraine issue, China's position is clear and consistent. We will continue to work with the international community to make our own contribution to facilitating a political settlement of the Ukraine crisis. Some media have sought to misrepresent China's position of the Ukraine issue and sow discord between China and the countries concerned. This calls for vigilance. Next one, please.
下午好，法新社提问。
AFP. The French ambassador also said that former Soviet Union member states in international law lacks the basis for sovereignty. The Lithuanian side said that these remarks show that there's a lack of confidence in China's ability to mediate in the Ukraine issue. Do you agree with the ambassador's remarks? And do you believe that those countries' sovereignty do not have a firm basis in international law?
对外作为一个整。
The Soviet Union was a federal state and as a whole was one subject of international law in international relations. This does not negate the republic's status as sovereign countries after the Soviet Union's dissolution. On the issue of sovereignty, China's position has been objective and impartial, and it is clear-cut. We are ready to work with the international community to make our own contribution to facilitating a political settlement of the Ukraine crisis. Next one, please.
谢谢凤凰卫视的记者。我们关注到中国和印度。
Phoenix TV. The Chinese and Indian military held a new round of talks on border issues on April the 23rd. Could you offer more specifics? To my knowledge, on April the 23rd, the Chinese and Indian military held the 18th round of China-India Corps Commander level meeting. Following important common understanding of the leaders of both countries, the two sides held an in-depth exchange of views on expediting the resolution of relevant issues. For more specifics, I refer you to the competent authorities. Next one, please.
Thank you. From the Wall Street Journal. Just wanted to follow up, please.
华尔街日报还是追问一下，驻法大使的言论，你可否说明一下他的言论是否代表中国政府的立场？中方是否是想收回一些这些言论？因为有很多欧洲国家呼吁中国这样做。这些言论是否合适？外交部是否坚持这些言论？
的表态代表中国政府。
I can tell you that what I stated just now represents the official position of the Chinese government. Next one, please.
Another question from AFP.
法新社，危地马拉总统今天抵达台湾，要加强与台湾的所谓外交关系。你对此访有何立场？对危地马拉总统有什么信息？We have also noted that some people in the political sphere in Guatemala said in recent interviews that the overwhelming majority of countries in the world recognize that Taiwan is part of China, and it is unreasonable that Guatemala does not have diplomatic relations with China. This shows that standing up for the One China principle is the right thing to do. It has the overwhelming support of the international community and represents the trend of the world. China is Guatemala's second largest source of import and fifth largest destination of exports. Recognizing the One China principle and developing relations with China is in keeping with the fundamental interests and people's aspiration in the country. Taiwan independent separatist activities are against the trend of history. They are just self-deceptive tricks of the DPP authorities, and they can by no means stand in the way of the inevitable historical trend of China's reunification. Just as the chairman of the Guatemala-China Friendship Association said, history shows us that there is only one China in the world, and attempts to divide China will not end well. Next one, please. 彭博社，法国大使言论的实录在使馆的网站上一开始放出来，后来又被删掉了。想请问为什么？是否说明这些言论有问题？
这个情况。
I'm not aware of what you mentioned.
下一个问题。
环球时报记者提问：据报道，近日英国外交大臣克莱。
Global Times. British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said in a recent interview that he fundamentally disagreed that the Taiwan Strait was a domestic matter for China, insisting that it was in everyone's interest to have a peaceful resolution to the situation. What's your comment? The British Foreign Secretary clearly needs to dust off his history books. There is only one China in the world, and Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. Taiwan's return to China is an important component of the post-World War II international order, as is stated in black and white in the Cairo Declaration and the Potsdam Proclamation. The One China principle is a prevailing consensus among the international community and a basic norm in international relations, affirmed in Resolution 2758 of the UN General Assembly. The One China principle is the political foundation and precondition for the establishment and development of China-UK diplomatic relations. More than 50 years ago, in the Let me stress again that the Taiwan question is purely China's internal affair at the core of China's core interests. Its resolution is a matter for the Chinese. No external force has any right to interfere. It is hoped that the UK side will approach this key matter of principle with a clear head and ample prudence. Next one, please.
NBC. There is speculation that China's greater nuclear cooperation with Russia.
NBC 有人猜测，中俄在核领域的合作将助力中国成为超级核大国。俄中两国的核武库总和最终将远远超过美国。这个对中国的核战略的评价是否公正？
是这种对中国核。
Let me say that such conjecture or distortion of China's nuclear strategy either lacks common sense or reveals ulterior motives. China upholds the independent foreign policy of peace, upholds nuclear strategy of self-defense, and abides by the nuclear policy of no first use of nuclear weapons. We have been maintaining the nuclear power at the minimum level required by national security. At the same time, we have been conducting normal cooperation on peaceful use of nuclear energy with all countries on the basis of bilateral agreements and in accordance with domestic laws and regulations and international obligations. By contrast, the U.S., with the largest and most advanced nuclear arsenal in the world, is committed to the first use of nuclear weapons as a policy of nuclear deterrence, upgrading its nuclear triad, and deploys tactical nuclear weapons in Europe by nuclear sharing arrangements. It also tightens the so-called nuclear alliance by strengthening the extended coercion or transferring nuclear power submarines. China and the U.S. are not comparable on this issue. We hope relevant parties would be clear about that.
Reuters here. My question is.
路透社，之前有人问过类似的问题，关于中国驻法大使。简单的问一下。中方是否认为乌克兰是一个独立国家？
是顾问吧？你提到的国家是联合国的正式会员。
The answer to that question is self-evident. The country you mentioned is full UN member state. Only sovereign countries can become UN member states. This is understood by all. China has established and developed sound relations with Ukraine in line with the purpose and the principles of the UN Charter and the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. Any attempt to drive a wedge in or disrupt China's relations with Ukraine and relevant countries are ill-intentioned and will not succeed. Next one, please. Please 打开麦克风。
探索和利用外层空间应当为所有的国家。
We've learned from an event in celebration of the Space Day of China. China has given lunar samples to Russia and France respectively. Could you share more details? The exploration and use of outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, shall serve the well-being and interests of all countries. This is widely accepted basic principle of outer space law. International sharing and joint research of lunar samples helps world scientists study the formation and evolution of the moon and explore the unknown. China gave away 1.5-gram lunar sample for research purposes to France and Russia during French President's and President Putin's visits in April this year and February last year, respectively. In return, Russia gave a 1.5-gram lunar sample to China during President Xi Jinping's visit to Russia in March this year. The samples China gave them were collected from the moon by the Chang'e 5 mission in December 2020. China has been committed to international space cooperation and exchanges on the basis of equality, mutual benefit, and win-win cooperation. We have promulgated the regulations on the management of lunar samples, which encourages research on lunar samples and promotes the sharing of scientific findings. Scientists from countries have participated in the scientific study of China's lunar samples. We are ready to work with other countries to step up cooperation, jointly explore the peaceful use of outer space, and make greater new contributions to the progress of human civilization. Next one, please.
Thank you. Another question from
法新社，关于澳大利亚的问题。今天澳大利亚宣布了最大的一个军事上的改革，将投入更多资金用在防卫上。背景是中方对地区的安全构成挑战。你的集合评论。
我始终奉。
I want to stress that China always follows a national defense policy that is defensive in nature. We are committed to maintaining peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific and the whole world. We do not pose any challenge to any country. We hope relevant countries will not hype up the so-called China threat narrative. Next one, please.
Hello, thank you. Reuters here.
路透社有媒体报道说，美方呼吁韩国不要加大对中国的芯片出售，填补市场的空缺。如果中国禁止美光科技在中国出售芯片的话，你对美方的这种言论有何回应？
中方已经多次就美国对华。
China has stated its position on the U.S.'s export restrictions on chips on multiple occasions. To maintain its hegemony and selfish interests, the U.S. has been pushing for decoupling and coerced its allies to join the U.S. to contain China. This gravely violates the market principles and the international trade rules and disrupts stability of the global industrial supply chains, undermines the interests of all companies, including those of China. This is typical scientific hegemonism and trade protectionism. This wins no support, and China firmly objects that. We call on relevant countries and governments, as well as companies, to tell right from wrong, jointly uphold the multilateral trading regime, and safeguard the stability of global industrial supply chains. As to the case of Micron, we have stated that we have been conducted the cyber investigation for national security in accordance with law. This is a normal supervision measure taken to safeguard national security.
Thank you. Bloomberg News again.
彭博社，可否介绍一下中印边界会谈的最新的情况？ I just answered this question a moment ago. On the 23rd, the two sides held the 18th round of core commander level meeting following the important command understanding of leaders of both countries. They held in-depth exchange of views on expediting the resolution of relevant issues. For more, I refer you to the competent authorities. Next one, please.
谢谢翻译塔泽社。俄罗斯是联合国
TASS. Russia is the April president of UNGA. Foreign Minister Lavrov on April the 24th and 25th attended a Security Council meeting in New York. Before leaving for the meeting, Lavrov said that the U.S. has refused to issue visa for the traveling press. Do you have any comment?
We hope countries concerned can properly resolve the issue through dialogue. Next one, please.
From PGI.
印报托也有媒体报道说，中国的防长将会访问印度，参加上合组织防长会。你对这种报道有何评论？可否证实？
I would refer you to the Ministry of National Defense of China. Next one, please.
Thank you, Reuters. My question.
路透社， 关于乌克兰和克里米亚的问题，感谢介绍中方的立场，并且提到乌克兰是主权国家，还有前苏联的加盟共和国也是主权国家，这似乎跟卢大使的言论有些不同。对此有何评论？
代表中国政府。
To start, what I stated just now represents the official position of the Chinese government. Second, when it comes to the sovereignty, independence, and the territorial integrity, and on upholding the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, China has the best track record. Next one, please. Anything else? That's all for today. Thank you.